Some say destiny has a peculiar sense of timing. On a rain-slicked highway just outside of Boston, where the glow of downtown's prosperity fades into the humble realities of working-class neighborhoods, two worlds were about to collide. Michael Reynolds, a single father who'd mastered the art of stretching every dollar and minute to their breaking point, was running late for his second job when he spotted the stranded Mercedes. Most people would have driven past. After all, surely, someone with a car like that could afford roadside assistance, but Michael wasn't most people. He didn't know that the woman standing in the rain, designer clothes soaked through, was Alexandra Morrison, the reclusive CEO of Morrison Tech, whose net worth exceeded the GDP of several small nations. He didn't know that she'd deliberately dismissed her security detail for one afternoon of normalcy, or that his simple act of kindness would set in motion events that would reshape both their lives. All he knew was what he'd always taught his daughter Emma: when someone needs help, you stop. What happened next would become the talk of Boston's elite circles and working-class diners alike. A story that would challenge everything they both believed about wealth, worth, and what truly matters in life. But perhaps most surprisingly, it would force them both to answer one simple question. When fate hands you an unexpected second chance, do you have the courage to take it? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The alarm chirped at 5:30 a.m., and Michael Reynolds was already reaching to silence it before the second beep. In the pre-dawn quiet of their small apartment, even the softest sounds seemed to echo. He'd learned early on that every extra minute of sleep was precious for Emma, especially on school days. His bare feet found the worn carpet, and he navigated the familiar path to the kitchen in darkness. The coffee maker, a birthday gift from Emma 3 years ago, waited faithfully on the counter. Next to it sat her proudest creation, a lopsided ceramic mug painted with "World's Best Dad" in wobbly letters, a fourth-grade art project that had become his daily dose of motivation. As the coffee brewed, Michael leaned against the counter and pulled out his phone, squinting at the bright screen. The email he'd been dreading from corporate headquarters sat unopened in his inbox. Rumors of downsizing had been circulating at the insurance company where he worked his day job, and yesterday's all-hands meeting hadn't done much to quiet them. "Dad?" Emma's voice drifted from the hallway. She stood there in her oversized Patriots sleep shirt, red hair a wild tangle around her face. At 12, she was already showing glimpses of her mother Sarah's features. The same determined chin, the same gentle eyes. "Hey, sunshine, you're up early." She padded into the kitchen, rapping, her arms around his waist in a sleepy hug. "Couldn't sleep. I heard you come in super late last night." Michael smoothed her hair, guilt tugging at his conscience. "Had to cover for Pete at the shop. Mr. Wilson's Camry needed emergency brake work." He didn't mention the woman with the Mercedes or how helping her had made him late for his shift. Some details would only worry Emma unnecessarily. "You work too hard," she mumbled into his shirt. "That's what dads do." He kissed the top of her head. "How about some breakfast? We've got time for real eggs today, not just cereal." Emma brightened, moving to the fridge. "Can I make my special scramble?" "As long as you don't use all the cheese like last time," Michael chuckled, watching as she gathered ingredients. These quiet morning moments were what he lived for, what he worked so hard to protect. While Emma worked her culinary magic, Michael sorted through the pile of mail he'd been too tired to open last night. Electric bill, higher than last month. A final notice from the orthodontist about Emma's braces, the lease renewal for their apartment, with its inevitable rent increase highlighted in yellow. He tucked them into his worn leather messenger bag, out of Emma's sight. She worried enough about him as it was. "Dad, look!" Emma presented her creation with flourish. Scrambled eggs dotted with bits of bell pepper and cheese, arranged in what he assumed was meant to be a smiley face. "I saved some cheese for later, just like you said." "It's perfect." He grabbed 2 plates from the cabinet, the one with the chip on the edge for himself. My little chef. They ate together at their small kitchen table, Emma chattering about her upcoming science project, while Michael nodded at all the right moments. His mind kept drifting to that unopened email, to the stack of bills in his bag, to the constant mathematical gymnastics of making ends meet. "Earth to Dad!" Emma waved her fork in front of his face. "You're doing that thing again." "What thing?" "That thing where you pretend to listen but you're really worried about grown-up stuff." She set her fork down, suddenly serious. "Is it about the job? Tommy's dad got laid off last month, and he said more cuts were coming." Michael reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Hey, no matter what happens, we're going to be fine. That's a promise." He managed to smile. "Now, isn't today the day you're presenting your book report on The Giver?" The distraction worked. Emma launched into a detailed explanation of her presentation plans, complete with dramatic hand gestures. Michael let her voice wash over him, a balm against the growing pressure in his chest. She was right. He did work too hard. But looking at her across their tiny kitchen table, at the determination in her eyes and the hope in her smile, he knew he'd work twice as hard, if that's what it took. His phone buzzed. A text from Pete about picking up an extra shift that weekend. Another buzz, the email notification he'd been avoiding. A third buzz, his calendar reminder about Emma's orthodontist appointment next week. Through it all, Emma's ceramic mug sat by his plate, its crooked letters seeming to shine in the morning light. World's best dad. Some days he wondered if he deserved that title, but every morning he got up and tried to earn it all over again. The Boston Globe's business section lay open on Alexandra Morrison's desk, her own face staring back at her from the glossy page. "Morrison Tech revolutionizes cancer treatment," the headline declared, accompanied by a photo of her at last week's press conference. She looked exactly as a CEO should, polished, confident, untouchable. Nothing like the drenched woman who'd stood helplessly beside her Mercedes the night before. "Ms. Morrison," her assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "The board is waiting in the conference room." Alexandra straightened her blazer, smoothing away an invisible wrinkle. "Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes." Her fingers lingered on the newspaper article, mind drifting to the man with the broken umbrella and kind eyes. The morning had started like any other. Security briefing over breakfast, 3 conference calls before 9, and a stack of contracts requiring her signature. But something felt different. Perhaps it was the lingering memory of standing in the rain, being seen not as Alexandra Morrison, the woman whose company had just revolutionized cancer detection, but simply as someone who needed help. She pulled up her browser, typing Michael Reynolds Boston into the search bar. A social media profile appeared, private, with a profile picture of him and a red-haired girl at what looked like a school science fair. His daughter, she presumed, remembering his words about her heart being bigger than Boston Harbor. "Ms. Morrison?" Her assistant again. "The board. Coming," she replied, closing the browser. But not before noticing that Michael's profile listed his workplace, Preston Insurance as a claims adjuster, and Pete's auto shop as a mechanic. The boardroom fell silent as she entered, 12 faces turning toward her with varying degrees of expectation and scrutiny. These meetings had become increasingly suffocating lately, each decision scrutinized through the lens of shareholder value and market perception. "Let's begin with the Q3 projections," she said, taking her seat at the head of the table. As numbers and charts flashed across the screen, Alexandra found her thoughts straying to simpler things. The sound of rain on metal, the quiet efficiency of capable hands at work, the genuine smile of someone expecting nothing in return. "And what are your thoughts on this, Alexandra?" She blinked, focusing on Gerald Matthews, the board's most vocal member. He was watching her with that familiar mix of challenge and condescension that she'd grown accustomed to over the years. "I think," she said carefully, "that we sometimes lose sight of the human element in our pursuit of innovation." The words came unbidden, inspired by her encounter the night before. "Our new cancer detection technology isn't just about market. Share. It's about the single parent who can't afford to take time off work for multiple doctor visits. It's about making life-saving technology accessible to everyone, not just those who can afford premium healthcare. The room stirred uncomfortably. This wasn't the usual language of quarterly reports and profit margins, but for the first time, in months, Alexandra felt truly connected to her company's mission. After the meeting, she returned to her office, closing the door on the murmur of corporate politics. The city sprawled below her window, a maze of opportunities and struggles, of lives intersecting in unexpected ways. Somewhere out there, a kind man with a broken umbrella was going about his day, unaware that he'd sparked something in her that she'd thought long buried, a reminder of why she'd built this company in the first place. Her phone buzzed with a message from her head of HR. Daily personnel reports ready for review. Alexandra opened the file, an idea taking shape. The cancer detection program would need a pilot group for its community outreach initiative. What better place to start than a local insurance company? She reached for her phone, then stopped. Direct intervention would be too obvious, too much like charity, and something told her Michael Reynolds wasn't the type to accept charity. No, this would require a more delicate touch. Opening her laptop, she began to type, proposal, community health, initiative pilot program. At the top of the potential partner list, she added Preston Insurance. Sometimes the most significant changes started with the smallest decisions. The rain had started again, pattering against her office windows. Alexandra stood, watching the drops trace patterns on the glass. Somewhere between last night's act of kindness and this morning's board meeting, a plan had begun to take shape, one that might help not just Michael Reynolds, but countless others like him. Her intercom buzzed again. "Ms. Morrison, your 3 o'clock is here." "Send them in," she replied, turning from the window. She was Alexandra Morrison, CEO of Morrison Tech, and she had just remembered why that title meant something beyond stock prices and shareholder meetings. Sometimes it took a broken umbrella to show you what really mattered. The fluorescent lights of Pete's auto shop hummed overhead as Michael slid out from under a rusted Volkswagen, wiping grease from his hands. 6 hours into his evening shift, and the stack of bills in his messenger bag seemed to weigh heavier than the tools in his belt. He'd spent his lunch break at Preston Insurance, reviewing the latest round of layoff rumors, calculating and recalculating his savings against months of possible unemployment. "Hey, Reynolds," Pete's gravelly voice echoed across the garage. "Got a customer asking for you specifically. Says she heard you're good with German cars." Michael frowned, setting down his wrench. He hadn't worked on any German cars recently except for... But that couldn't be her. He deliberately avoided mentioning the Mercedes or its well-dressed owner to anyone, even Pete. "Send them in," he called back, quickly straightening his work shirt. The name patch was starting to peel at one corner. He'd have to fix that soon. But instead of the woman from the rain-soaked highway, a man in an impeccable suit stepped into the garage, looking distinctly out of place among the oil stains and tired machinery. He carried a leather portfolio and wore an expression that suggested he was accustomed to much cleaner environments. "Mr. Reynolds," the man extended a business card. "Jonathan Blake from Morrison Automotive Services. We're implementing a new community partnership program, and your name came up in our research." Michael accepted the card automatically. His mind racing. Morrison. Where had he heard that name recently? The man continued speaking, but Michael's attention had drifted to the pile of unpaid bills tucked away in his bag. The orthodontist's final notice lay on top, its red letterhead visible through the worn leather. "Considering your experience and recommendations," Blake was saying, "we believe you'd be an excellent candidate for our senior mechanic position. The salary is competitive, of course, and the benefits package includes full medical and dental." That caught Michael's attention. "Dental?" Blake smiled, probably noticing how Michael's eyes had flickered toward his bag. "Full orthodontic coverage for dependents, among other things." The universe, Michael decided, had a twisted sense of humor. Here he was, worried about making Emma's next orthodontist payment. And suddenly this man appears offering exactly what they need. It felt too convenient, too perfect. "Why me?" he asked, studying the business card. "There are better mechanics in Boston. We value more than just technical skill, Mr. Reynolds. Character matters to us." Blake's eyes moved meaningfully to the wall behind Michael, where a collection of thank-you notes from grateful customers had accumulated over the years. "Your reputation for honesty and dedication precedes you." Before Michael could respond, Pete emerged from his office, wiping his hands on a shop rag. "You trying to steal my best mechanic suit?" Blake turned smoothly. "Mr. Davidson, I presume? Perhaps we could discuss a potential partnership arrangement. Morrison Automotive Services is always looking to expand our network of trusted local shops." Pete's weathered face registered surprise, followed by careful interest. He'd been struggling to keep the shop competitive against larger chains, though he'd never admit it openly. "Let me get those partnership details for you," Blake said, reaching into his portfolio. As he moved toward Pete's office, he glanced back at Michael. "Think about it, Mr. Reynolds. We'll be in touch." Once they were alone, Michael leaned against the Volkswagen, his mind churning. The business card in his hand felt like it weighed a ton, its embossed letters catching the harsh garage lights. Morrison Automotive Services, a division of Morrison Tech. The name clicked suddenly. Morrison, like the woman with the Mercedes. It couldn't be coincidence, could it? But how would she even know where he worked? His phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "Dad, guess what? My science project got selected for the district fair. P.S. Can we have pizza tonight, pretty please?" Michael smiled despite his confusion, typing back a quick, "Congratulations. Pizza definitely earned." "Regular order?" The response came instantly. "You're the best." He tucked the business card into his pocket, next to the folded orthodontist bill. Whatever game the universe was playing, he couldn't afford to ignore an opportunity like this, not with Emma's future hanging in the balance. But something about it nagged at him, like a loose bolt he couldn't quite locate. "Reynolds!" Pete called from his office. "Got another Mercedes out front. Lady says she needs her brake pads checked." Michael straightened, his heart skipping a beat. But when he walked out to the customer area, it was just Mrs. Henderson from 3 blocks over, with her ancient Mercedes station wagon that had more rust than paint. Still, as he popped the hood and got to work, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change. He just wasn't sure if it would be for better or worse. The business card seemed to burn in his pocket, right next to the bill that reminded him he might not have the luxury of choice. Alexandra sat in her private office, reviewing the employee benefits package her team had just finished revising. The document represented everything Morrison Tech stood for, or at least everything she wanted it to stand for. Comprehensive. Healthcare, educational assistance, childcare support, and now an expanded dental plan that would cover everything from routine cleanings to complex orthodontic work. "Ms. Morrison," her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Mr. Blake is here with his report. Send him in." She minimized the benefits document as Jonathan Blake entered, looking pleased with himself. "It went exactly as expected," he said, taking the seat across from her desk. "Though I have to admit, I'm curious why we're pursuing this particular auto shop. There are larger operations we could partner with." Alexandra kept her expression neutral. "Sometimes smaller operations have stronger community ties. What was your impression of Mr. Reynolds?" "Cautious, competent, clearly dedicated to his work." Blake consulted his notes. The shop owner, Pete Davidson, mentioned that Reynolds often stays late to help customers who can't afford immediate repairs, works out payment plans for them. He's got quite a collection of thank-you notes on the wall. Something warm stirred in Alexandra's chest. It wasn't just the rain then. Michael Reynolds really was the person she'd glimpsed that night. And the background check? Blake handed her a folder. "Clean as they come. Single father, wife passed away from cancer 6 years ago, daughter's 12, straight A student." He's been working 2 jobs since his wife's medical bills started piling up. No debt except for some remaining hospital bills and... He checked. His notes, current orthodontic work for his daughter. Alexandra opened the folder, studying the photograph paperclip to the first page. Michael at his day job, helping an elderly client with insurance forms. His expression was patient, kind. The same expression he'd worn in the rain while changing her tire. "What about Preston Insurance?" she asked, turning the page. "Any pushback on the partnership proposal?" "They're eager to participate in this pilot program. Their HR department is already reviewing the implementation timeline for the new health benefits package." Blake smiled, though they seem a bit confused about why they were chosen. "Good." Alexandra stood, moving to the window. The afternoon sun caught the edge of her mother's old wedding ring, which she wore on a chain around her neck. "Send me the final partnership agreements for both Preston and Pete's shop. I want everything ready for signatures by next week." "Of course." Blake hesitated. "Ms. Morrison, if I may, this is a lot of maneuvering for one potential employee." Alexandra turned, fixing him with a steady gaze. "This isn't about one employee, Jonathan. It's about proving that corporate responsibility isn't just a buzzword. If we can help one family, one community shop, imagine what we could do on a larger scale." She picked up the benefits package from her desk. "Besides, have you seen our latest cancer detection statistics? Early intervention saves lives and money. This is just good business." After Blake left, Alexandra sat at her desk, opening a new email draft. The subject line read, "Community Health Initiative, Phase 1 Implementation." She attached the benefits package, modified to highlight the dental coverage on the first page. Sometimes the most effective help came disguised as corporate strategy. Her phone buzzed with a message from Gerald Matthews. Board members expressing concerns about resource allocation in new community program. Request meeting to discuss ROI projections. Alexandra smiled grimly. Of course they were concerned. Heaven forbid a corporation prioritize people over immediate profit margins. She began typing her response, remembering Michael's words about his daughter's heart being bigger than Boston Harbor. "Gerald, happy to discuss. Our ROI projections actually show significant long-term benefits. I've attached a preliminary report. Key points include reduced employee turnover through comprehensive benefits, enhanced community goodwill and brand, loyalty, preventive care, leading to decreased insurance costs, potential tax benefits through community investment initiatives." She hit send, then opened her calendar to block off time for what would undoubtedly be a contentious board meeting. But for the first time in years, she felt truly energized by a corporate initiative. This wasn't just about helping Michael Reynolds, though that had been the catalyst. This was about remembering why she'd built Morrison Tech in the first place, to make a difference in people's lives. Her intercom buzzed again. "Ms. Morrison, HR needs your signature on the new employment contracts." "Send them in." She straightened the papers on her desk, including the benefits package that would soon change lives, starting with a single father who'd stopped to help a stranger in the rain. Michael sat at his kitchen table long after Emma had gone to bed, staring at the job offer letter from Morrison Automotive Services. The salary figure made his breath catch every time he looked at it, nearly double what he made at Preston Insurance. The benefits package alone would eliminate half his current worries. Full medical, dental, tuition assistance, 401k matching, even a childcare stipend for after-school programs. He'd read the letter so many times the edges were starting to wear. Each reading brought new questions, new doubts. Why him? Why now? And most importantly, what was the catch? His laptop sat open beside him, browser history full of searches about Morrison Tech and its various subsidiaries. The company seemed legitimate enough, more than legitimate actually. They were at the forefront of medical technology innovation, with a growing presence in various sectors, but something about the timing nagged at him. "Dad," Emma's voice made him jump. She stood in the hallway in her pajamas, hair mussed from tossing and turning. "You're still up?" Hey, Sunshine couldn't sleep. She padded over to the table, eyes falling on the letter. "Is that from the fancy car company?" "Morrison Automotive," he corrected gently. "And yes, they offered me a job. A better job than insurance." She pulled out a chair, suddenly looking very grown up as she studied his face. "Is that why you've been weird all week?" Michael couldn't help but smile. When had his little girl gotten so perceptive? "I've been weird. Super weird. You keep zoning out and checking your phone, and you barely touched your pizza yesterday." She reached for the letter. "Can I?" He nodded, watching as she read, her expression growing more animated with each line. "Dad, this is amazing. Look at all this stuff they're offering." And her eyes widened. "Wait, is this salary number real?" "Seems to be." "Then why do you look like someone gave you a math problem you can't solve?" She set the letter down, fixing him with a look so reminiscent of her mother that it made his heart ache. "This is good news, right?" Michael leaned back in his chair, trying to find the right words. "Sometimes when something seems too good to be true." "Mom always said that was just scared person talk," Emma interrupted, then immediately bit her lip, wondering if she'd gone too far. The memory hit him like a physical thing. Sarah in this same kitchen, telling him to apply for the promotion at Preston even though he thought he wasn't ready. "Sometimes being scared is just your brain's way of asking for a permission slip to be brave," she'd said. "You're right," he said softly. That's exactly what she would say. Emma reached across the table, putting her small hand over his. I think Mom would want you to take it. She always said you work too hard." "2 jobs isn't so bad," he protested weakly. "Dad," her tone was pure Sarah, "you fell asleep at my piano recital last month." "I was resting my eyes." "You snored during the quiet part." They looked at each other for a moment before both breaking into laughter. It felt good, this moment of lightness amid all his heavy thoughts. Emma sobered first. Is it because of my braces?" "Because I know they're expensive, and if that's why you're working so much—" "Hey," Michael squeezed her hand. "Your braces, your education, your future. Those aren't burdens, Emma. They're investments. And I'd work 10 jobs if that's what you needed. But what if you didn't have to?" She pushed the letter toward him. "What if this is like in those movies where the universe finally gives the good guys a break?" Michael picked up the letter again, seeing it through her eyes. A chance for more time together. No more falling asleep at recitals. No more choosing between paying the orthodontist and fixing the car. No more stretching every dollar until it screamed. "When did you get so wise?" he asked. She grinned. "Must be all those books you keep making me read." Then, more seriously, "Dad, remember what Mom used to say about doors? 'God never closes one without opening another,'" he quoted softly. "Maybe this is your open door." Emma stood, coming around the table to hug him. "Just promise you'll think about it." He held her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "I promise." "Good." She pulled back, yawning. "Now can we both go to bed? Some of us have a math test tomorrow." After she'd gone, Michael looked at the letter one more time. Emma was right. Sarah would have pushed him to take this chance. She'd always been the brave one, the one who saw opportunities where he saw obstacles. His phone buzzed, an email from Preston Insurance about another round of organizational restructuring. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of timing after all. Taking a deep breath, he pulled out his phone and began composing an email to Jonathan Blake. Maybe it was time to stop looking for the catch and start believing in open doors. The Morrison Tech building gleamed in the morning sun, its glass and steel facade stretching skyward like a monument to modern success. Michael adjusted his new tie. Emma had helped him pick it out, insisting that his old one looked like it was from when dinosaurs roamed the earth, and stepped through the revolving doors, his employee ID badge clipped neatly to his lapel. The lobby hummed with purpose, people streaming in and out with the practiced efficiency of a corporate hive. A security guard directed him to orientation in conference room B, where other new employees gathered around a long table, clutching folders and coffee cups. "Welcome to Morrison Tech," a cheerful HR representative began, distributing welcome packets. "We're excited to have you all join our family. Let's start with a brief company overview." The presentation screen flickered to life, and Michael's coffee cup froze halfway to his mouth. There, in a professional headshot that took up half the screen, was the woman from the rain-slicked highway. Alexandra Morrison, CEO and founder of Morrison Tech, the same woman whose Mercedes he'd fixed, who'd tried to pay him, who disappeared into the storm before he could even process what was happening. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. The mysterious job offer, the perfect timing, the generous benefits package. This wasn't the universe opening a door. This was calculated intervention. "Mr. Reynolds," the HR representative's voice snapped him back to the present. "Your department. Orientation is actually separate. Mr. Blake will escort you to the automotive division." Jonathan Blake appeared at his elbow, immaculate as ever. "This way, please." Michael followed him to the elevator, his mind racing. As they ascended, Blake chatted about security protocols and parking assignments, but Michael barely heard him. All he could think about was how thoroughly he'd been maneuvered into this position. The elevator opened directly into what looked like an executive floor. Blake led him not to the automotive division, but to a corner office with a view of the Boston skyline. And there, standing at the window, was Alexandra Morrison herself. She turned as they entered, and for a moment Michael saw both versions of her overlaid, the powerful CEO and the stranded motorist, the benefactor and the stranger he'd helped without question. "Welcome to Morrison Tech, Mr. Reynolds," she said, her voice carefully professional. "I hope orientation is going well. Did you enjoy the rain that night?" The words came out before he could stop them, more clipped than he'd intended. Blake looked confused, but Alexandra didn't flinch. "I'll handle this, Jonathan." "Thank you." After Blake left, silence filled the office like a physical presence. Alexandra moved to her desk, but didn't sit. "I suppose I owe you an explanation." "You suppose?" Michael's hand went to his ID badge, the symbol of everything he now questioned. Was any of this real? The job offer, the partnership with Pete's shop, the benefits package that just happened to cover everything my daughter needs? "All of it is real," she said firmly. "The position exists. You're qualified. The benefits are standard for all employees." Standard benefits that were revised. Just last week, he pulled out his phone, showing her the company memo he'd found in his research. "I do know how to use Google, Ms. Morrison." She had the grace to look slightly abashed. "The revisions were planned for months. Your situation simply highlighted their importance." "My situation?" He laughed without humor. "You mean when I stopped to help someone I thought was just another person having a bad night, not a CEO playing some kind of corporate fairy godmother? Is that what you think this is?" For the first time, her professional mask slipped, showing something like hurt. "A game? I don't know what to think." He paced to the window, looking out at the city below. "I have a daughter who deserves better than a father who gets charity jobs. This isn't charity." The force in her voice made him turn. "This is recognition of exactly the kind of person we need in this company. Someone who stops to help others without asking who they are or what they can offer in return. Someone who teaches their child that kindness matters more than convenience." She reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a business card, the same one she'd almost given him that night. "I was going to hand you this, you know, but then you refused payment. And I realized that money wasn't what made you stop. That's when I knew you were exactly what Morrison Tech needed." "And what's that?" "A reminder." She set the card down. "A reminder that success isn't just about profit margins and stock prices. It's about people. Real people making real differences in others' lives." Michael looked at the card, then at his badge, thinking of Emma's face when he'd told her about the job, of Pete's relief when the partnership papers came through, of all the doors this opportunity could open for his daughter's future. "The job is real," Alexandra said softly. Your qualifications are real. The only thing I did was make sure your resume landed on the right desk. Everything else, that was all you. He picked up the business card, running his thumb over the embossed letters. And if I walk away, then you walk away. The partnership with Pete's shop stands. Your old position at Preston Insurance remains protected under our new corporate agreement. I won't stop you from choosing your own path. She met his eyes. But I hope you'll stay. Not for me, not for charity, but for what we could accomplish. Together. The sincerity in her voice was impossible to fake. Michael thought of Sarah again, of her belief in open doors and permission slips to be brave. Maybe sometimes help didn't have to mean charity. Maybe sometimes it just meant someone saw your worth and wanted to invest in it. I have one condition, he said finally. Name it. No more behind-the-scenes orchestration. If we do this, we do. It with complete honesty. Alexandra smiled, extending her hand. Deal. Now, shall we discuss your actual role here? The automotive division has some interesting challenges I think you'll enjoy tackling. Michael shook her hand, feeling the weight of the employee badge settle into something more like possibility than obligation. Lead the way, Ms. Morrison. Alexandra, she corrected. After all, you've already seen me at my worst, drenched and helpless with a flat tire. That wasn't your worst, he said, following her to the door. That was just your most human. The Boston Herald's obituary section from 6 years ago lay spread across Michael's desk, its edges worn from frequent handling. Sarah Reynolds, 35, beloved wife and mother, the headline read. The photo showed her as he always remembered her, laughing, full of life, with a young Emma on her hip. The article mentioned her battle with cancer, her work as a kindergarten teacher, her dedication to her family. What it didn't mention was how she'd fought to keep teaching until the very end, how she'd planned Emma's birthday parties 6 months in advance, or how she'd made Michael promise not to let grief turn him bitter. You okay in here? Alexandra's voice startled him from the doorway of his new office. He'd been so lost in thought he hadn't heard her approach. Just, he gestured vaguely at the paper, not bothering to hide it. They'd agreed on honesty, after all. Alexandra stepped in, closing the door softly behind her. Her eyes fell on the obituary, understanding dawning on her face. Tell me about her. Michael traced the edge of the photograph. She would have loved this place. All the innovation, the potential to help people. That was her thing, helping people. He smiled faintly. She's the one who taught Emma about stopping for stranded motorists. She sounds remarkable. She was. Michael leaned back, memories washing over him. When she got sick, she made me. Promised 2 things. To never let Emma forget how to laugh, and to never let pride stand in the way of joy. He met Alexandra's eyes. I've done pretty well with the first one. And the second, that's complicated. He gestured around the office. All of this, it feels like cheating somehow. Like I'm taking a shortcut she never got. Alexandra pulled up a chair, her usual CEO authority softening into something more personal. Can I tell you something about shortcuts? At his nod, she continued, my mother died when I was young too. Cancer. Back then, Morrison Tech was just my father's small medical supply company. Her death changed everything. Changed him. He became obsessed with developing better diagnostic tools, more effective treatments. He poured everything into research. She paused, playing with the ring she wore on a chain around her neck. When he died 10 years ago, everyone expected me to sell the company, take the money and run, but I saw what he couldn't finish, what my mother's death had started. It wasn't about making money, it was about making sure other families got more time than we did. Is that why you helped me? Because of Emma? I helped you because you reminded me that sometimes the biggest impact comes from the smallest moments. Of kindness, she smiled. The fact that you have a daughter who needs orthodontic care, that just made the timing right. Michael looked back at Sarah's photo. She would have liked you, you know. She always said the world needed more people who used their power to lift others up. I would have liked to meet her. Alexandra stood, smoothing her skirt. The board meeting about the Community Health Initiative is this afternoon. Would you consider sharing your story? Sometimes the best way to honor those we've lost is to help their legacy touch more lives. Michael thought about it. Sarah had always believed in turning pain into purpose. Maybe this was his chance to do just that. "I'll need to make a stop first," he said, reaching for his phone. Alexandra raised an eyebrow questioningly. "Emma's school. If I'm going to talk about family and legacy, she should be there. Sarah would want that." "Of course." Alexandra headed for the door, then paused. "Michael, for what it's worth, I don't think you're taking a shortcut. I think you're finally allowing yourself to take the path Sarah would have wanted for you." After she left, Michael looked at the obituary one last time before carefully folding it and putting it away. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Dad! My science project got first place. Can't wait to tell you all about it." He smiled, typing back his congratulations. Then, after a moment's thought, he added, "How would you like to skip your last class and come see where Dad works? There's someone I'd like you to meet." Her response was immediate. "Is it the fancy car lady from the rain? Because I totally Googled her and OMG Dad." Michael laughed out loud, the sound echoing in his new office. Sarah had always said Emma was too clever for her own good. Looking around at where life had led them, he had to admit, maybe it was time to let that cleverness and a little help from unexpected places guide them towards something new. The obituary in his desk drawer seemed lighter somehow, less like a weight and more like a foundation. Sarah had given him the blueprint for living: laugh often, love deeply, and never let pride stand in the way of joy. Maybe it was finally time to follow it. The board meeting had been going better than expected. Michael's story about Sarah, about Emma, about the impact of comprehensive health care on real families, it had moved even the most skeptical board members. Alexandra sat at the head of the table, watching him speak with undisguised pride. This was exactly what Morrison Tech needed, a voice that could bridge the gap between corporate policies and human lives. Then his phone rang. Michael rarely kept his phone on during meetings, but with Emma, exceptions were always made. The school. Nurse's number flashed on the screen, and his heart dropped. "Mr. Reynolds, there's been an incident with Emma during her physical education class. She's having severe chest pains and difficulty breathing." The rest of the nurse's words faded into background noise. All he could hear was his own pulse pounding in his ears, memories of Sarah's first symptoms flooding back. He must have swayed because suddenly Alexandra was beside him, her hand steady on his arm. "My car's waiting downstairs," she said quietly. "To the board," she announced, "we'll reconvene tomorrow. Family emergency." The next few minutes passed in a blur. Alexandra's driver navigated Boston traffic with remarkable efficiency while she made calls, her voice a calm counterpoint to Michael's racing thoughts. "I've contacted Dr. Harrison at Boston Children's. He's waiting for us." She squeezed his hand briefly. "Best pediatric cardiologist in New England." Michael turned to her, surprised. "But we haven't even reached the hospital yet." "How did you—" "Morrison Tech partners with their research department." She managed a small smile. "Being CEO has its advantages." They found Emma in the emergency room, pale but alert, a hospital bracelet already secured around her thin wrist. The sight of that plastic band, so similar to the ones Sarah had worn, made Michael's knees weak. "Dad!" Emma tried to sit up, but the nurse gently pressed her back down. "I'm okay, really. Just got dizzy in gym class. Coach Matthews totally freaked out." "Save your breath, sweetheart." Michael took her hand, noting how cold her fingers felt. "Let's let the doctors do their job." Dr. Harrison arrived moments later, reviewing the preliminary tests with focused efficiency. "Has Emma ever experienced symptoms like this before?" "No, never." Michael's throat tightened. Her mother had cardiac complications with her cancer. Could it be? "Let's not jump to conclusions," Dr. Harrison said kindly. Given Emma's age and symptoms, I suspect this might be something far less serious, but I'd like to run some additional tests to be certain. Hours passed in the sterile hospital waiting room. Michael paced while Alexandra worked quietly on her laptop, fielding urgent emails without complaint. Every time he apologized for disrupting her day, she simply shook her head. "I meant what I said about family coming first," she reminded him. "Besides, I've gotten more actual work done here than I would have in 3 board meetings." Finally, Dr. Harrison returned with results. "Good news," he announced. "Emma has a condition called mitral valve prolapse. It's relatively common, especially in young women. While it requires monitoring, it's not life-threatening." Michael sagged into a chair, relief making him lightheaded. "Not cancer. Not cancer," the doctor confirmed. "With proper monitoring and some activity modifications, Emma should lead a completely normal life. I'd like to schedule a follow-up appointment for next week." After Dr. Harrison left, Michael noticed Alexandra discreetly wiping her eyes. "You're crying." "Allergies," she said quickly, then laughed at her own transparency. "Okay, fine. I might have become a bit invested in Emma's well-being. She reminds me of someone I used to know. Yourself. My mother, actually." She pulled out her phone, showing him an old photograph of a woman with her same determined expression, surrounded by children. She was a pediatric nurse, said there was no better medicine than making a scared child smile. They sat in comfortable silence, watching through the door's window as Emma charmed the nursing staff, already looking more like herself. "Thank you," Michael said quietly, "for everything today. The doctor, the calls, just being here. That's what friends are for." She hesitated, then added, "We are friends, aren't we? Beyond the whole CEO-employee thing?" Before Michael could answer, Emma's voice carried from her room. "Dad, Alexandra, come see what happens when I press this button on my heart monitor." They shared a look of alarm before hurrying into the room, where Emma sat innocently watching. Her heart rate display, the nurse trying not to laugh. "Your daughter," Alexandra whispered as they entered, "is definitely going to keep us on our toes." "Our toes." Michael raised an eyebrow. She blushed slightly. Figure of speech. But watching her interact with Emma, explaining the medical equipment with a perfect mix of intelligence and warmth, Michael wondered if maybe it wasn't just a figure of speech after all. Maybe it was a glimpse of something more, something that felt surprisingly like family. The hospital cafeteria at midnight was a peculiar kind of liminal space, where normal social boundaries seemed to blur under harsh fluorescent lights. Alexandra sat across from Michael at a corner table, both cradling paper cups of coffee that had long since gone cold. Emma was finally sleeping upstairs, monitored overnight for observation, despite her protest that she felt totally fine, guys. Seriously. "I haven't had hospital coffee this bad since—" Michael trailed off, staring into his cup. "Since Sarah?" Alexandra ventured softly. He nodded, absently folding and unfolding the napkin beneath his cup. "You know what's strange? When the school called, my first thought wasn't even about Sarah. It was about this random Tuesday 3 months ago when Emma was telling me about her science project. She was so excited, talking a mile a minute, and all I could think about was the overtime shift I had to cover at Pete's. You can't blame yourself for working to support her, can't I?" He looked up, his eyes tired. "I was so focused on providing for her future that I almost missed her present. If today had gone differently—" Alexandra reached across the table, stilling his restless hands with her own. "But it didn't. Emma's okay, and you're not alone anymore." The warmth of her touch seemed to break something loose in him. "When Sarah first got sick, she made these video diaries for Emma, things she wanted to tell her about growing up, about life, about love. I've never watched them, couldn't bring myself to, but I keep them safe, this little USB drive with all of Sarah's wisdom stored away for when Emma's ready." Alexandra listened, her hand still covering his, as he continued. "Today, in that waiting room, all I could think was, What would my video diary say? Have I taught her enough? Loved her enough? Been enough? Michael. Alexandra's voice was firm but gentle. I saw Emma's face every time she looked at you today. The way she tried to make you laugh. How she kept checking to make sure you were okay, even when she was the one in the hospital bed. That girl doesn't need video diaries to know how much her father loves her. He turned his hand over beneath hers, their fingers intertwining naturally, neither acknowledging the intimacy of the gesture. She asked about you, you know. When you stepped out to take that call, wanted to know if you were coming back. Of course I was coming back. Alexandra pulled a napkin from the dispenser, took out a pen, and wrote her private number on it. A coffee stain bloomed in one corner, making the last digit bleed slightly. Here, for next time you need someone to sit with you in a hospital cafeteria at midnight. Or for any time, really. Michael stared at the napkin, then back at their joined hands. Alexandra, I'm still your employee. There are probably rules about this sort of thing. Probably, she agreed, making no move to withdraw her hand. But and think we passed just business somewhere between the emergency room and your daughter teaching me her secret handshake. That startled a laugh out of him. She made you do the whole routine? Including the spin move. Which, by the way, is very difficult in heels. They shared a smile, the kind that held more meaning than either was ready to voice. Michael carefully folded the napkin with her number and tucked it into his shirt pocket, right over his heart. You should check on Emma, he said finally, though he made no move to stand. Probably, Alexandra echoed his earlier response. The night nurse promised to text me if she wakes up, though. You got the nurse's number? I might have promised to help get her son an internship in our biotech division. At his raised eyebrow, she shrugged. He's a promising student, and I've learned recently that sometimes the best opportunities come from unexpected connections. Michael shook his head, smiling. You never stop, do you? Always finding ways to help people. Says the man who stops for stranded motorists in the rain. She squeezed his hand once, before finally letting go. Come on, let's go see if your daughter has charmed any more of my medical staff into career changes. As they walked back to Emma's room, their shoulders brushing occasionally in the empty hallway, Michael felt something shift. The napkin in his pocket felt like a promise, or maybe a permission slip, not just to be brave, but to be happy again. And somewhere, he thought Sarah, would be smiling, watching her two favorite people find exactly what they needed in the most unexpected place. The Boston Business Journal's headline screamed across Michael's tablet screen. Morrison Tech CEO's mystery man, corporate fairy tale, or scandal. Below it was a grainy photo of him and Alexandra leaving the hospital together 3 nights ago. A hand on his arm, both of them smiling at something Emma had said. He'd known something was wrong the moment he arrived at work. The security guard had given him an odd look. His co-workers' conversations had hushed when he passed. Now, staring at the article, he understood why. His phone buzzed. Emma. Dad, I'm trending on Twitter. Well, kind of. They're calling me Mystery Man's daughter. Can I please make my account public now? Before he could respond, his office door opened and Alexandra burst in, looking more disheveled than he'd ever seen her. Have you seen the article? Yeah. He held up his tablet. Emma's thrilled about her social media debut. This isn't funny, Michael. Alexandra paced the office, her usual composure cracking. The board is having a field day. Gerald Matthews has called an emergency meeting. There are reporters camped outside both our houses. Michael's amusement faded. Both our houses. How did they? Public records, property tax documents. They're very thorough when they smell a story. She stopped pacing, running a hand through her hair. They're painting it as a security breach, saying I orchestrated your hiring for personal reasons. But that's not... He stopped, remembering. Well, you did orchestrate my hiring. Not for this. I never intended... She sank into a chair. I never expected to feel... The unfinished sentence hung between them, heavy with possibility. Michael's phone buzzed again with another text from Emma. OMG, Dad. They found my science fair photo with you. People are saying, Really nice things about your smile? Despite everything, he couldn't help but grin. At least someone's enjoying this. Alexandra looked up, catching his smile, and something in her expression softened. How is she? After everything? Back to normal. Already bargaining for more gym class privileges. He moved to sit beside her. The doctor says her heart is stronger than they initially thought. Like father, like daughter, Alexandra murmured. A knock at the door interrupted them. Jonathan Blake entered, looking grave. Ms. Morrison, the board is waiting and there's a statement from Gerald Matthews being circulated to the press. Alexandra stood, straightening her jacket. What kind of statement? The kind that suggests a review of recent hiring practices and corporate governance. Blake hesitated. They're particularly interested in the timing of the benefits package revision. Of course they are. Alexandra's voice was tired. Because, heaven forbid, we actually try to help our employees without an ulterior motive. Michael stood too. I should resign. Get ahead of this before... Don't you dare. Alexandra turned to him, eyes flashing. You earned your position here. Your work with the automotive division has already saved us millions in efficiency improvements. I won't let them twist this into something sordid. She reached for the tablet on his desk, scanning the article. Her finger traced the photo, lingering. On their frozen smiles. Look at this picture. Do you know what I see? Two people who just found out a child they care about is going to be okay. If the board can't understand that basic human connection, then maybe it's time for a different kind of corporate restructuring. A commotion outside drew their attention. Through the office windows, they could see reporters gathering in the lobby below. Someone had leaked Alexandra's schedule. Ms. Morrison, Blake prompted gently. The board? Right. She squared her shoulders, then did something that surprised both men. She reached for Michael's hand, squeezing it quickly. Whatever happens in that meeting, remember what you told Emma about your heart being stronger than they thought. After she left, Michael sat at his desk, staring at the article again. His phone chimed with yet another message from Emma. Dad, is Alexandra okay? People are saying mean things about her online. Can we have her over for dinner? I make really good spaghetti now. He smiled, remembering Alexandra's words from the hospital. That's what friends are for. Except they weren't just friends anymore, were they? Somewhere between rain-soaked highways and hospital cafeterias, between board meetings and midnight conversations, they'd become something more, something worth fighting for. He picked up his phone and finally replied to Emma. Dinner sounds perfect, sunshine. And you're right. Alexandra could probably use some friends right now. The real kind, not the corporate kind. The headline on his tablet continued to flash accusingly, but somehow it seemed less important now. Let them talk. Some things, like the way Alexandra looked at Emma, or how she remembered every detail of his coffee order, or the way she fought. For what she believed in couldn't be twisted into scandal. Some things were just real. Dear Diary, Mom always said that writing things down helps you figure them out. So here goes. Everything's kind of crazy right now. There are actual reporters outside our apartment. Dad tried to act like it was no big deal, but I saw him peeking through the curtains this morning like a spy in one of those movies. He thinks I'm too young to watch. It's weird, seeing your life turn into headlines. They keep calling Dad the mystery man, even though there's nothing mysterious about him. He's just Dad, the one who burns toast but makes amazing pancakes, the one who still checks under my bed for monsters even though I'm 12. Okay, sometimes. I just ask him to because I know it makes him feel needed. But Alexandra gets it. She sees him the way I do. I noticed it at the hospital when I was pretending to be asleep. The way she brought him coffee without asking how he takes it, she already knew. How she made him laugh when he was trying so hard to be worried. It reminded me of the videos Mom left me, the ones where she talks about how love isn't just big gestures. It's remembering little things about someone, like how they take their coffee or what makes them smile. I'm supposed to wait until I'm older to watch those videos, but sometimes when Dad's at work, well, when he used to work 2 jobs, I'd play 1 or 2. Mom talks a lot about how she hopes Dad finds someone who makes him light up again, someone who challenges him, she said. Because your father, Emma Bear, he needs someone who pushes him to see how special he really is. That's Alexandra. She pushes him, but in a good way, like when she made him present at that big meeting about healthcare. Dad was nervous, but she just looked at him like she knew he could do it. And he did. I may have watched part of it on Morrison Tech's internal live stream because I figured out Dad's laptop password. Sorry, Dad. The reporters are saying it's some big scandal, but they don't see what I see. They don't see how Dad hums in the kitchen now, or how he's actually awake during my piano practice instead of falling asleep. They don't see how Alexandra remembers every detail about my science projects, or how she sneaks extra cookies into Dad's lunch when she thinks no one's looking. Ms. Garcia, my English teacher, says every good story has conflict. She says it's what makes the ending matter more. So maybe all this crazy stuff with the reporters and the mean board members is just part of our story. The messy middle part before the good ending. Dad and Alexandra are having this big dinner thing tonight. Dad's been changing his shirt like 5 times. I'm not supposed to tell anyone that. Alexandra's bringing takeout from that fancy Italian place, because we all know Dad's cooking is scary. I've got a plan, though. I'm going to accidentally need help with my math homework in my room so they can have some time alone. Mom would approve. She always said sometimes people just need a little push in the right direction. I know some kids might be weird about their dad dating someone, especially someone famous like Alexandra. But Mom also told me in one of her videos that love multiplies, it doesn't divide. The heart is like a home, she said. You can always build on more rooms. Besides, Alexandra looks at Dad the way Mom looks at him in all our old photos, like he's something special. Like he's not just some guy who changes tires or fixes insurance claims, but someone who makes the whole world better just by being in it. I should go. Dad's calling me for dinner. Alexandra just arrived. I can tell because Dad dropped something in the kitchen, which he only does when he's nervous. I'm going to give them 10 minutes before I come out with my super difficult math homework. P.S. Note to future me. If this all works out and they get married someday, I want it noted that I totally called it first. Also, I better be the flower girl, or better yet, the wedding planner. I've got some ideas involving Dad's old car shop and fancy fairy lights that would be perfect. Love, Emma P.P.S. Mum, if you're watching somehow, I think you'd really like. She makes him smile the way you did. And she's teaching me that sometimes the best families are the ones we build ourselves, one dinner at a time. The anonymous email landed in the Morrison Tech HR inbox at 8:43 a.m. Concerns about preferential treatment in recent promotion. Alexandra stared at her screen, jaw tight, as she read the carefully worded complaint about Michael's rapid advancement within the automotive division. The sender had taken pains to appear concerned rather than accusatory, citing company policy about maintaining professional boundaries and ethical standards. Have you seen this? Jonathan Blake appeared in her doorway, tablet in hand. It's already circulating through middle management. Forward it to legal, Alexandra said, pinching the bridge of her nose. And get me the performance metrics from the automotive division, all of them. The numbers didn't lie. Under Michael's leadership, efficiency had improved by 30%. Customer satisfaction scores were at an all-time high. The new apprenticeship program he'd implemented with local vocational schools was being hailed as a model for corporate community partnership. None of that mattered to the rumor mill. Her phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Emergency meeting called in automotive. Guess someone finally complained officially. Before she could respond, Gerald Matthews appeared in her office, uninvited and radiating smug concern. Alexandra, we need to discuss damage control. Damage control? She kept her voice level. You mean the anonymous complaint about our most successful division head? About your relationship with a subordinate, Gerald corrected, settling uninvited into a chair. The board is concerned about potential liability. Questions are being raised about every decision involving the automotive division. Questions. Raised by whom? Concerned parties. He slid a folder across her desk. This contains a proposal for restructuring the division. Moving Reynolds to our Seattle office would... No! Alexandra's voice could have frozen fire. I'm not transferring my best manager across the country because of office gossip. It's not gossip when there are photographs, when there are witnesses who saw you at the hospital with his daughter, when what, Gerald? When I showed basic human compassion, when I supported an employee during a family emergency. She stood, her anger finally breaking through. Or is this about the community health initiative, about proving I can't be trusted to make business decisions because I dare to care about our employees? Gerald's expression hardened. The board meets tomorrow. I suggest you consider the proposal carefully. Your father built this company on sound business principles, not emotional entanglements. After he left, Alexandra opened her bottom drawer, pulling out an old photograph. Her father stood in front of the original Morrison Tech building, arm around her mother. They looked happy, in love, and completely professional in their pressed suits and careful smiles. Her phone buzzed again. Michael. Just finished the meeting. Pretty sure half my team thinks I'm sleeping my way to the top. The other half is mad they didn't think of it first. Despite everything, she smiled. His ability to find humor in chaos was one of the many things she appreciated about him. Professionally, of course. A knock at her door revealed Jonathan, looking grave. The email's gone viral internally. Every department head has received it and... He hesitated. And someone leaked Emma's medical records to the board. They're suggesting your intervention at the hospital was inappropriate use of corporate resources. Alexandra's blood ran cold. Using Emma, a child, as ammunition. This wasn't just office politics anymore. This was war. She picked up her phone, typing quickly. Emergency strategy meeting, my office, bring coffee. Michael's response was immediate. Regular or dealing with corporate vultures' strength? Strongest available. And Michael, bring the performance reports. All of them. It's time to remind everyone why you were hired in the first place. She set down her phone and turned to Jonathan. Get me everything we have on the Community Health Initiative results. Patient outcomes, cost savings, everything. And find out who accessed those medical records. Someone's about to learn that crossing ethical lines works both ways. Her computer chimed with another anonymous email, this one with more veiled threats about maintaining corporate integrity. Alexandra smiled grimly. They thought they could force her hand by attacking the people she cared about. Time to show them exactly why she was her father's daughter and her mother's. She opened her laptop, creating a new document. Proposal. Corporate Ethics Review, addressing anonymous harassment and medical privacy violations. Sometimes the best defense was a devastating offense. The Morrison Tech boardroom felt colder than usual. Alexandra sat at the head of the table, watching as Gerald Matthews distributed copies of the meeting minutes from 6 months ago, the day she'd first proposed the Community Health Initiative. The day she'd first thought about helping a stranger who changed her tire in the rain. As you can see, Gerald was saying, the pattern of questionable decision-making began well before Mr. Reynolds' hiring. He gestured to the highlighted sections, rushed benefit revisions, arbitrary partnership selections, unauthorized use of corporate resources for personal matters. You mean the hospital? Alexandra interrupted. Where a child needed emergency care? Where you interfered with standard medical protocols to impress an employee you were romantically involved with. The accusation hung in the air. Alexandra looked around the table, at faces she'd known for years. Some couldn't meet her eyes. Others watched with carefully neutral expressions. Only Jonathan Blake, sitting near the door with his laptop, offered a subtle nod of support. Let's be clear about something, Alexandra said, standing slowly. Every decision I've made as CEO has been in the best interest of this company and its employees. The Community Health Initiative, it's reduced our insurance costs by 28%. The partnership with local repair shops, customer satisfaction is up 40%, and we've created 50 new jobs in underserved communities. She tapped the meeting minutes. You want to talk about patterns? Let's talk about how our employee retention rate has doubled since implementing the new benefits package. Let's talk about how our corporate image has improved since we started actually caring about the communities we serve. Pretty words, Gerald cut in, but the numbers support her. Michael's voice came from the doorway. He hadn't been invited to this meeting, but he stood there anyway, holding a thick folder. Every metric, every projection, every outcome has exceeded initial estimates. Gerald's face darkened. This is a closed board meeting. You have no right. Actually, he does. Jonathan spoke up, turning his laptop around. As head of our most successful division, Mr. Reynolds has standing to present relevant data to the board. Company bylaws, Section 7, Paragraph 3. Alexandra felt a surge of pride. In Michael's quiet confidence, in Jonathan's careful preparation, in her own decision to trust her instincts about both men. The board's concern, one of the older members, spoke up, isn't about numbers. It's about judgment, about maintaining appropriate boundaries, like the boundary between corporate ethics and personal vendetta. Alexandra picked up a new folder, the one she'd prepared last night. Because I have here documented evidence of multiple ethics violations, including unauthorized access to private medical records and targeted harassment of employees. She watched Gerald's face pale slightly. Would the board be interested in discussing those boundaries? This is absurd, Gerald stood. You're proving our point, using corporate resources to protect your boyfriend. I'm protecting every employee who works for this company. Alexandra's voice rang with authority. I'm protecting the principles my parents built this company on. My father understood that innovation wasn't just about technology, it was about people. And my mother, she touched the ring she wore on its chain. She taught me that true leadership means standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. She distributed copies of her own document. Here's my proposal, a complete restructuring of our corporate governance. Full transparency in hiring and promotion decisions, extended health benefits for all employees, not just management, community involvement requirements for every division. The boardroom erupted in murmurs. Alexandra continued, and a zero-tolerance policy for harassment, retaliation, or invasion of employee privacy. You can't be serious, Gerald sputtered. The costs alone are offset by the benefits. Michael stepped forward, opening his folder. I have the projections right here. 5-year forecast showing increased productivity, reduced turnover, and significant tax advantages through community investment programs. Alexandra watched the board members reviewing both documents. She saw the moment the tide began to turn, when numbers and ethics aligned to show a path forward that was both profitable and right. There will need to be some adjustments, the board chair said finally. Controls put in place, guidelines for managing personal relationships within the corporate structure. Of course, Alexandra agreed. I welcome the oversight. As long as it's applied equally to everyone. Her gaze rested meaningfully on Gerald. This isn't over, Gerald warned as the board began to disperse. You're right, Alexandra smiled. It's just the beginning. Jonathan, please escort Mr. Matthews to HR. I believe they need to discuss appropriate use of medical records. After most people had left, Michael lingered. That was quite a speech. About your parents? I meant every word. She touched her mother's ring again. They believed in doing well by doing good. I just lost sight of that for a while. Until you got a flat tire in the rain. Until I met someone who reminded me that the best business decisions often start with a simple act of kindness. She stepped closer. Speaking of which, how did you know to come to this meeting? Michael grinned. Let's just say Emma's not the only one who can plan a timely intervention. Alexandra laughed, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. We should celebrate. Maybe dinner? With Emma, of course. Of course. His eyes softened. Though this time, maybe we don't have to pretend. She's actually doing math homework in her room. Alexandra felt her cheeks warm. She told you about that? She's very proud of her matchmaking skills. He touched her arm gently. Almost as proud as I am of you today. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Did you guys win? Dad's wearing his everything worked out smile. P.S. I'm thinking Italian for dinner. Love you both. Love you both. The words made Alexandra's heart skip. Maybe some boundaries were meant to be crossed after all. Michael stared at his resignation letter, cursor blinking at the end of the last sentence. After the triumph of the board meeting, after Alexandra's passionate defense of their relationship, this felt like betrayal. But the whispers hadn't stopped. If anything, they'd gotten worse. Did you hear? He orchestrated the whole thing. Of course she defended him. Have you seen the way they look at each other? Wonder what other benefits come with being the CEO's boyfriend. The letter was simple. Professional. Dear Ms. Morrison, it is with sincere regret that I tender my resignation as head of automotive operations at Morrison Tech, effective 2 weeks from today. The opportunities provided by this position have been invaluable, and the company's mission of combining innovation with community service remains an inspiration. However, recent events have made it clear that my continued presence may be a distraction from that mission. The success of Morrison Tech's community initiatives should not be overshadowed by personal matters. I am grateful for the trust placed in me and the chance to contribute to such meaningful work. I will ensure a smooth transition of all current projects and responsibilities. Respectfully, Michael Reynolds. His finger hovered over the send button when Emma burst into his home office. Dad, you have to see this. Alexandra's trending, and it's actually good this time. She thrust her phone at him, showing a viral clip. From a tech conference. Alexandra stood at the podium, commanding the room with quiet authority. When people ask me about Morrison Tech's recent changes, she was saying, they often focus on the numbers. But true innovation isn't just about profit margins. It's about recognizing potential in unexpected places. It's about understanding that sometimes the best business decisions start with a simple act of kindness. The camera panned to show faces in the audience nodding in agreement. Alexandra continued, 6 months ago, I had a flat tire in the rain. The person who stopped to help me didn't know who I was. He helped because it was right, because he believed in teaching his daughter that kindness matters more than convenience. That moment changed everything, not because of romance, as some have suggested, but because it reminded me why my parents built this company. They believed business could be both profitable and humane. They understood that true success comes from lifting others up, not from climbing over them. Michael's hand dropped from the mouse. On screen, Alexandra was still speaking. So yes, Morrison Tech has changed. We've invested in our employees, in their families, in their communities. And our success proves what I learned that rainy night, that the best way to build a strong company is to build up the people within it. Dad? Emma's voice was small. Why do you have a resignation letter on your screen? He closed his laptop quickly, but Emma's face had already fallen. You're leaving? Because of what people are saying? But Alexandra just defended you in front of everyone. It's complicated, sunshine. No, it's not. Emma's voice rose. You're doing that thing again, where you decide what's best for everyone else without asking them. Just like when you wouldn't let me try out for the school play, because you thought it would be too much with my heart condition. Emma, no. You don't get to decide this alone. It affects all of us. Me, you, Alexandra. We're becoming something. A family, maybe. And families make decisions together. His phone buzzed. Alexandra, just finished the conference. Coming over with dinner. Emma texted that she mastered that carbonara recipe she's been practicing. Another buzz. Also, the Community Health Initiative is being featured in Harvard Business Review. They want to interview you about the automotive apprenticeship program. Proud of you." Emma was still watching him, her mother's determination written across her face. "Mom's videos," she said suddenly. "There's one you need to see. One I wasn't supposed to show you until I thought you were ready." Before he could respond, she ran from the room, returning with the USB drive he'd kept locked away for 6 years. She plugged it into his laptop, scrolling through files until she found the one she wanted. Sarah's face filled the screen, beautiful and fierce even through the pallor of illness. "Michael," she began, "if Emma's showing you this, it means you're at a crossroads, probably overthinking things, trying to protect everyone but yourself. So let me tell you what I wish I had more time to say. Love isn't a liability. It's an asset, the kind that appreciates over time, that pays dividends in joy and possibility. Don't you dare waste it because you're afraid of what others might think. Be brave, my love. Be happy. That's an order from your wife." The video ended. Michael sat in silence, letter forgotten on his screen. "Alexandra will be here soon," Emma said softly. "Maybe instead of a resignation letter, you could write something else. Something about future plans instead of goodbye." From downstairs came the sound of a key in the lock. Alexandra using the key they'd given her last week. The smell of Italian food wafted up, along with her voice calling out a cheerful hello. Michael looked at his daughter, then at Sarah's frozen smile on the screen, then at the resignation letter that suddenly seemed ridiculous. With 3 quick clicks, he deleted it. "Come on," he said to Emma, "let's go help Alexandra with dinner, and maybe after dinner we can all talk about future plans together." Emma's smile was pure sunshine. "Finally! But, Dad, maybe change your shirt first. That one has coffee stains, and you know how Alexandra notices everything." As he changed, he could hear Emma and Alexandra laughing downstairs, the sound of his past and future harmonizing in a way that would have made Sarah proud. The school auditorium was packed for the district's STEM showcase. Alexandra sat in the front row, trying to be inconspicuous despite the whispers and sideways glances from other parents. On stage, Emma stood confidently beside her project display. Community Impact Through Corporate Responsibility, a case study of Morrison Tech's health initiative. Michael squeezed Alexandra's hand as Emma began her presentation. "Good evening, everyone. 6 months ago, I had a heart condition diagnosed because someone cared enough to make healthcare accessible to everyone, not just executives. That someone was Alexandra Morrison." The whispers intensified. Emma continued, undaunted. "But this isn't just my story. Thanks to Morrison Tech's Community Health Initiative, 23 other kids in our district have received early diagnoses and treatment. 15 parents have caught health issues before they became emergencies. And 38 families no longer have to choose between medical care and paying rent." She clicked to her next slide, showing graphs and statistics. "The data proves what my dad always says. Doing the right thing is also the smart thing. Morrison Tech's employee retention is up, community trust is up, and yes, profits are up too." Alexandra felt tears threatening as Emma turned to the final slide, a photo of the 3 of them at last week's company picnic, laughing over ice cream cones. "Some people question Miss Morrison's judgment when she helped my family. They called it a scandal. But I call it leadership. Because real leaders don't just talk about making a difference. They do it, one person, one family, one community at a time." The applause started slowly, then built to a crescendo. In the back of the room, someone was filming with their phone. By morning, the video would be viral, shared hundreds of thousands of times with captions like "CEO's Scandal Transformed into Community Victory" and "Young Girl Defends Corporate Leadership with Data and Heart." As Emma accepted her first-place ribbon, Alexandra felt Michael tense beside her. "What's wrong?" "Gerald Matthews just walked in," he murmured. "Back right corner." Indeed, Their former adversary stood watching, his expression unreadable. But, instead of causing trouble, he did something unexpected. He began to applaud, nodding slightly in their direction before turning to leave. Later, at Emma's favorite celebration spot, the ice cream parlor where she'd first taught Alexandra their secret handshake, they watched as social media exploded with positive coverage. The viral video had caught the attention of major news outlets. Headlines now read, "Morrison Tech's revolutionary approach to corporate social responsibility and love, leadership and legacy. How one CEO's personal story changed corporate culture." "Does this mean people will stop being weird at work?" Emma asked, diving into her triple chocolate sundae. "Some might," Michael said, stealing a cherry from her bowl. "Others might take longer. Change takes time." "But it's worth it," Alexandra added, watching them with undisguised affection. "Just like some other changes I know." Emma grinned. "Speaking of changes, when are you going to ask her to move in with us, Dad? Because I already made space in the hall closet and reorganized the kitchen cabinets by height efficiency." Michael choked on his coffee. "Emma! What? Alexandra's over every night anyway, and she already has her own coffee mug. Plus I heard her telling her realtor the condo feels too empty now." Alexandra felt her cheeks warm. "You heard that?" "I hear lots of things. Like Dad practicing his moving in together speech in the shower this morning." Now it was Michael's turn to blush. "I thought you were at piano practice. Ended early, so can we skip the awkward parts and just admit we're already basically living together? Because I have some ideas about redecorating the living room." Alexandra caught Michael's eye over Emma's head, seeing in his expression the same joy and certainty she felt. Sometimes the best moments of redemption weren't the public ones, but the private victories, like a family planning their future over ice cream sundaes. Her phone buzzed, another news alert about the viral video. But for once, she didn't feel the need to check it. The only headline that mattered was being written right here, in soft serve and shared smiles and the endless possibilities of tomorrow. In Michael's new office at Morrison Tech's Community Outreach Center, a business plan lay open on his desk. Not just any plan. This was his vision for expanding the automotive apprenticeship program into something bigger, something that could change lives the way his had been changed. "The Morrison Tech Community Partnership Initiative," read the cover page. Below it, in careful bullet points, he'd outlined a program that would partner with local vocational schools, offering training, mentorship, and career pathways to students from underserved communities. He'd been working on it for weeks, staying late after Emma's bedtime, refining every detail. Alexandra had noticed, of course, she noticed everything. But she'd given him space to develop it on his own. That was one of the many things he loved about her. She knew when to push and when to let things unfold naturally. A knock at his door interrupted his reverie. "Ready for lunch?" Alexandra stood in the doorway, holding up a brown paper bag. "Emma packed it for us," she says, and I quote, "You two work too hard and forget to eat properly." Michael smiled, making room on his desk as Alexandra set out Emma's carefully packed lunch. Sandwiches cut into hearts. "Really subtle, Emma," he muttered. "Fresh fruit. And 2 cookies, with a note that read, 'Dessert is mandatory. Love your favorite daughter, future stepdaughter.' She's not exactly subtle with her hints anymore, is she?" Alexandra laughed, though Michael noticed the soft blush on her cheeks. "About as subtle as her room redecoration project." He took a bite of his sandwich. "Did you see she's already labeled the closet doors with our names? And reorganized my shoes by color code?" Alexandra's eyes sparkled, though I have to admit, her organizational skills are impressive. Michael reached for the business plan, suddenly nervous. "Speaking of organization, I've been working on something, a new initiative." Alexandra took the document, her expression shifting from personal to professional interest, though the warmth never left her eyes. As she read, her smile grew wider. "Michael, this could change everything. The scope, the community impact, it's exactly what we need." "You really think so?" He pointed to the budget section. I've run the numbers. If we partner with local businesses, split the training costs, we could create hundreds of jobs within the first year. Real careers, not just positions. Like what Pete did for you, Alexandra said softly. Exactly, but on a bigger scale. He turned to the last page. And look here, I've included a scholarship program for students who lost parents to cancer, Sarah's Legacy Fund. Alexandra set down the proposal, moving around the desk to take his hand. She'd be so proud of you. Taking everything you've learned, all your experience, and using it to help others. I learned from the best. He pulled her closer. A wise CEO once told me that the best business decisions start with kindness. Sounds like a brilliant woman. She is. Michael took a deep breath. Which is why, well, Emma's not the only one who's been planning things. He reached into his desk drawer, pulling out a small box. Alexandra's breath caught. I had this. And whole speech prepared, he said, opening the box to reveal a simple but elegant ring about fate and flat tires and finding love when you least expect it. But really, it comes down to this. You and Emma are the best things that have happened to me since Sarah. You've taught me that second chances aren't just about moving on. They're about growing stronger, loving deeper, building something new, while honoring what came before. Alexandra's eyes shimmered with tears as he continued. So what do you say? Want to make Emma's closet organization official? Before she could answer, a muffled squeal came from outside the office door, followed by a distinct shh and several giggles. Emma, Michael called out, trying not to laugh. How many of your friends are out there? The door creaked open, revealing Emma and three of her closest friends, all holding their phones. We were just documenting for historical purposes. Alexandra laughed through her tears. Well, since we have an audience, yes. Michael Reynolds. Yes to the ring. Yes to the closet organization. Yes to building this beautiful future together. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, cheers erupted from the doorway. Emma rushed in, wrapping them both in a hug. Finally, now can we talk about the wedding? Because I have Pinterest boards, and trust me, you're going to want to see them. Michael caught Alexandra's eye over Emma's head, seeing in her smile the same joy he felt. This wasn't just a second chance at love. It was a first chance at something entirely new, something built on kindness, strengthened by challenge, and made perfect by the boundless heart of a 12-year-old who never stopped believing in happy endings. First, Alexandra said, picking up the business plan, we launch your initiative. Then we can talk Pinterest boards. Deal! Emma pulled out her phone. But can I at least send the ring pic to the group chat? Everyone's been waiting literally forever. As Emma documented the moment for social media posterity, Michael held Alexandra close, thinking about roads not taken and doors left open. Sometimes the best plans were the ones you never made, like stopping for a stranded motorist in the rain, or letting your heart lead you toward a future brighter than any you could have imagined. 1 year later, rain drummed against the windows of Morrison Tech's new community center. Inside, Alexandra stood at the podium, surveying the packed auditorium. The crowd was a mix of corporate executives, local business owners, vocational students, and families, all gathered for the launch of the Sarah's Legacy Foundation. Sometimes, she began, the biggest changes in our lives start with the smallest moments of kindness. 1 year ago, I was a CEO who had lost sight of what truly matters, in business and in life. Then on a rainy night, much like this one, a man stopped to help a stranger with a flat tire. In the front row, Michael sat with Emma, both beaming. Emma wore a junior board member badge, her own design, approved by the foundation's board, after she presented a compelling argument for youth representation in community programs. Today, Alexandra continued, we're not just launching a foundation, we're creating a promise that says no child should lose opportunities because they lost a parent. A promise that says kindness and business success aren't mutually exclusive. A promise that says sometimes the best investments we can make are in each other. She gestured to the massive check displayed on stage, the foundation's initial endowment, jointly funded by Morrison Tech and dozens of local businesses. Pete's Auto Shop's logo sat proudly among them, the small business that had started it all, now part of something bigger. Our first initiative, Alexandra announced, will provide full scholarships to 50 students who have lost parents to cancer. But beyond that, we're creating a network of support, mentorship, and job opportunities. Because what these families need isn't just financial assistance, they need to know they're not alone. Emma squeezed her father's hand as Alexandra continued. And to launch this initiative, I'd like to invite our new Director of Community Partnerships to speak. A man who taught me that true success isn't measured in profit margins, but in lives changed. My husband, Michael Reynolds. Michael stood, straightening the tie Emma had picked out for him. No coffee stains this time. As he passed Alexandra, on his way to the podium, their rings caught the light, simple bands that matched the one Sarah had worn, now part of a new story. When my late wife Sarah was teaching, Michael began, she had a saying posted in her classroom: kindness creates ripples that become waves. At the time I thought it was just a nice sentiment. Now I understand it was a blueprint for living. He gestured to the presentation screen, where photos began to scroll. Students in the automotive apprenticeship program, families receiving medical care through the community health initiative. Emma, at her science fair with her award-winning project on corporate responsibility. This foundation isn't just about providing opportunities. It's about creating a community where helping others isn't extraordinary. It's expected, where stopping for a stranded motorist isn't just an act of kindness, but an investment in our shared humanity. As if on cue, thunder rolled outside. Emma grinned at Alexandra, whispering, "The universe has a pretty good sense of timing, doesn't it?" Alexandra smiled back, touching the double locket she wore, one side holding a picture of her parents, the other of their new family. Her, Michael, and Emma making silly faces at Emma's 13th birthday party. The ceremony concluded with the official signing of the Foundation's charter. As cameras flashed, Emma joined her parents on stage, all three of them adding their signatures to the document. Not just Michael and Alexandra as co-chairs, but Emma too, signing as Youth Advisory Board President, a title she'd campaigned for with PowerPoint presentations and data-driven arguments about the importance of young voices in philanthropic organizations. Later, as they left the center, they found themselves standing in the rain again. But this time, they had umbrellas, all three of them prepared and together. "You know what this means?" Emma said, twirling her umbrella. "No more stranded motorists. In the rain, no more choosing between medicine and rent, no more kids feeling alone when things get hard." Michael pulled her close. "Your mom would love this sunshine, all of it." "She does," Emma said confidently. "And I bet she and Alexandra's parents are somewhere up there, probably planning heavenly fundraisers or something." Alexandra laughed, linking her arm through Michael's. "Well, if they're anything like their daughter, they've probably already organized everything alphabetically and color-coded the divine spreadsheets." "Speaking of organizing," Emma said innocently, "since the foundation launch is done, can we finally start planning the baby's room? Because I have some ideas about ye themes." Michael and Alexandra stopped walking. "Emma," Michael said carefully, "how did you—" "Oh, please." Emma rolled her eyes affectionately. "Alexandra's been drinking ginger tea instead of coffee. You both get weird smiles whenever we pass the baby store. And I found the ultrasound picture in the desk drawer when I was organizing office supplies." "We were going to tell you tonight," Alexandra said softly. "Are you okay with it?" Emma's smile could have lit up the rainy evening. "Are you kidding? I've already started a new Pinterest board, World's Best Big Sister. Now come on, let's get home. I have nursery color schemes to show you, and Dad looks like he needs to sit down." As they drove home through the rain, Michael thought about ripples becoming waves, about flat tires leading to foundations, about second chances becoming new beginnings. and about how sometimes the best kind of family isn't the one you're born into or even the one you plan for. It's the one that finds you when you're busy helping others, growing larger with each act of kindness, stronger with each challenge. Overcome. The rain continued to fall, but this time everyone had somewhere warm to go. And in 9 garages across the city, courtesy of Sarah's Legacy Foundation, there were new tire-changing kits waiting to help the next stranded motorist. Each with a simple message attached: kindness creates ripples that become waves.